Hello and welcome to Yolanda Nava. Do you see what I see? You're going to love today's guest. It's mezzo-soprano and LA Opera ambassador Suzanna Guzman. Suzanna is also an Emmy Award television broadcast host, and she has a radio show called Opera at Noon and Opera at Noon and Off Broadway. She is a dynamic personality, just brimming with talent. Welcome, Suzanna Guzman.
Yolanda, thank you so much for having me. This is so lovely to see you after so many years.
It's been, your son was 7 years old when I met you, when I interviewed you for It's All in the Frijoles, so he's a grown-up now.
He's a total grown-up in a beautiful job with a beautiful wife, and we're just waiting for beautiful grandchildren. You know that one.
Yeah, I know that.
Super exciting.
Well, that is exciting, and your life is very exciting right now. I am amazed, and when I looked at your resume, because it's been a while since we've talked, at the number of European cities and cities here where you performed in just beloved roles. And tell us a little bit about the highlights of those performances.
There have been so many, and I think that it all started with a role that I have so dear to my heart, which is in The King and I play Amazon number 2, and we guarded the king, and the king who I guarded happened to be Yul Brynner. And that was so exciting because he literally started everything. Because of Mr. Brynner, we were going to go to Broadway. I was in the 4,000th performance that he did of The King and I at the Pantages Theater. And just coincidentally, I happened to win the Metropolitan Opera competition at the exact same time we were going to Broadway. And I asked Mr. Brynner if I would ever get to go on as Lady Tiang, which was the role I was understudying. And he said, "No, why do you ask?" And I said, "Because I'm supposed to go to the Metropolitan Opera, but my dream has always been to perform on Broadway." And he said, "You are welcome to be in our show as Amazon number 2, but you're too tall to be Lady Tiang. And don't forget, Suzanna, the Metropolitan Opera is on Broadway." And he was 100% right. So I did the competition. And from that competition, I was a national finalist. I was picked up by the Kennedy Center. And at the Kennedy Center is where I was able to perform not only with Placido in a brand new opera written by the incredible GianCarlo Menotti, but it started a 25-year relationship with me, GianCarlo, and the Kennedy Center. And ultimately, I ended up doing what has become my signature role, which was the title role in Carmen. And I had just the greatest time. I did that everywhere. I did that all through Europe. And then once you get one role, your foot's in the door, and that opens doors for you everywhere else. I got to be in GianCarlo's Amal and the Night Visitors. I was nominated for a Helen Hayes Award for that. And just to be the cutest thing about GianCarlo, I have to tell you this. I did 5 different shows with GianCarlo and many years of productions. And the role that I first worked with him in was his opera Goya, and I played the Duchess of Alba. He always introduced me, no matter where we were. "You know the Duchess." Isn't that adorable?
That's adorable. That's adorable.
Loved him. It was so much fun. And when we met, I was in Santa Fe singing Carmen, I think. Was that the first time we met?
It probably was, because yes, I was in Santa Fe. Yeah.
So that was an amazing experience. I've done that role over 250 times, and just it was a wonderful gateway. And from the time I started doing Carmen's, I've been so blessed to do a ton of Latina artists. So I have segued from the young mothers and the sexy gypsy girl to the grandmas and the old gypsy woman. And I'm super excited about that. It's really fun that I still get to sing and perform. And now that my son is grown and I don't have to deal with anything, I just can concentrate on my music. And I've been just so blessed. I have several wonderful works that are happening right now, including hosting the holiday celebration, which won our second Emmy this year.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. That was really a huge highlight.
Well, I was going to say that, you didn't have enough things to do flying all over the world performing as an opera performer. You expanded out into broadcast, and you're an Emmy Award-winning broadcast host.
Thank you for saying about juggling so many balls, because that's what it feels like. It feels like every time the phone rang, when I was just about ready to just be so bummed out and take up a ditch digging or something. Not that ditch digging is bad. Gardening. I love gardening. It was during the recession. Opera companies were closing like crazy, and I was able to get a job working with an opera program for teens, and then the radio show re-upped. I just answered the phone, and in 2012, PBS called and asked if I would do a weekly show called Open Call. And that was such a joy to do, because all I had to do was talk to people I was dying to meet and find out what they were up to. Sir Neville Mariner, Joe Mantegna, Saul Cardan from the Colburn School of Music, Chris Roundtree from the LA Phil. It was just mesmerizing. You know this as a host yourself, to speak to all these people and find out what the world is doing right now.
It's fascinating, because I fell in love with opera when I was a student at UCLA. Maybe I was a graduate student. I had a class with Natalie Lamonic.
Oh
yes. Oh, she was fabulous. She was absolutely fabulous. And I have a Carmen story with Martin Bernheimer. She had a class. I think we had about 400 students in that opera survey course. And she had us write a paper. We were supposed to take issue or take agreement with, the Martin Bernheimer, who was the critic for opera.
Of course, God rest
He
him.
had written an article about he thought Carmen was on the level of banal cafe music. I wrote this thing back and I said, no, I think Carmen is a fabulous, and I went on and on. And I wrote a very good essay. And Natalie read that out loud to the 400 students.
Oh my goodness.
And I got an A+ because I stated my own honest opinion. I didn't care that he was a critic. I stated my own honest opinion about that opera. It's a fabulous opera. It's human. It's a human story. There's tragedy, there's drama, there's love. You can't go wrong with love. And then I was reading that, you had performed in Carmen. I realized that I had probably seen you in that too in New Mexico. But opera's a fascinating world. And it's you've done so many things with it, and doing the radio and the broadcast and everything is very important, because it broadens it out. People have kind of stood back from opera rather than really enjoying the theatricality, the beauty, the drama of it. And when you see it in New Mexico, they have the open, and you have a roof overhead. I saw Tosca there. And during Tosca, they have those thunderstorms, during monsoon season, during the summer. And at the point in Tosca, when it was very dramatic, boom, the lightning would go and you'd see the active lightning. It was really fabulous. So opera is a wonderful art form and a great place to learn, a great way to learn history. Like you say, you talk about the Duchess of Alba. We don't know about European history.
Oh, it's so fascinating. What was so thrilling about GianCarlo's take on that story of Goya and the Duchess and the Queen of Spain is that during the production, he would have moments where the entire company would form one of his paintings.
Oh,
it was so beautiful. And there was this just hysterical moment in rehearsals where we just heard this yelling and people were saying, what's going on? I've never heard GianCarlo yell. And there's a very famous picture of the Duchess of Alba holding her white little puppy. And it was a white terrier. And they had given her a live brown terrier. And GianCarlo said, no, I will be the laughing stock of the world. And Yolanda, the Queen of Spain, came to see that opening night performance. And he was so right. But I think one of the things that attracted me to opera the most was the integration of the art forms. You have the artistry in the sets and the costumes and design, but on top of that, you have full orchestras, you have beautiful dancers, amazing, just plain good old-fashioned acting on top of a specific kind of singing that is not heard anywhere, because for the most part, it's acoustic singing. And what this has done for me, I didn't know anything about opera before I sang my first Carmen. That was my first opera ever, was Carmen, that I saw. So I developed a children's show called Don't Be Afraid, It's Just Opera. And I teach children how to sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star like opera singers. And I let them know that it's just another art form with a particular sort of physicality. So we can sing over the orchestra, we sing over the chorus, we sing with the dancers, we sing with other principals, to let people know that's why we sing the way we do, in order for us to tell a story. Once they get past that, it's such a thrill to see people accept that the stories are timeless. They resonate with no matter what the experience in the world that's happening right now. It resonates with us in that capacity.
So you didn't plan to be an opera singer?
Not at all.
So what was your early preparation then?
My early preparation was I sang in a rock band.
Oh,
and
wow.
I sang cover music with a group called Dakota. We did some originals. We opened for Van Halen at the Whiskey A Go-Go. We were the first band on at 6 o'clock and they came on at 11. So I never met David Lee Roth, but we started touring and I lost my voice, and a friend of mine who is amazing, her name is Alba Quesada. She's a award-winning professor at the New School and my co-singer on our Grammy-nominated CD with the Southwest Chamber Music. But she said to me, you need a teacher. You're losing your voice because you don't know how to sing. You have a voice, but you need to train it. Marathon runners, Olympic athletes, they don't just do it. They get assistance on how to maximize. Yes. So I went to a teacher and she taught me one song, which was the habanera from Carmen, and she called it vocal therapy. She taught it to me. I sang it for maybe 6 weeks with her, and she said, I want you to go sing for Dr. Van Grove. And I thought he was at ENT, and he would say, you're healed, you're fine, go back to the band. But instead he said, you're hired, you have the job. And I said, excuse me? And he said, yes, I'm doing a production of Carmen and I'd like you to be my Carmen. And I said, what kind of doctor are you, sir? He said, I'm a doctor of music and I'm going to be conducting. This is an audition.
Isn't that wonderful? So you were blessed. Somehow your guiding stars have taken you where you needed to be to create your life and your purpose.
I do believe that. I also believe that I had the greatest on-the-job training ever. And I thank so many people. We have some local companies here. There was one called Casa Italiana that was in Chinatown. There was another one called Verdi Restaurant, which we had so many amazing professionals came out of that troupe. And then I did eventually go back to school to try to learn, but I thought I was going to be an actor. But in those early years, in the early 90s, there weren't a lot of roles that Latinas could do, hence Amazon #2. So it was people like GianCarlo Menotti and Frank Rizzo, Daniel Catán, God bless his soul, who appreciated a little actress who could interpret their music, and yet I had a good ear. So that's where my forte was. But Yolanda, I say this to all of the the people who have students or who are students themselves, it was the most stressful on-the-job training in the world. I sang at the Metropolitan Opera without being able to read music.
Oh my goodness.
I sang with so many of the greatest performers, Alfredo Kraus, Pavarotti, and I could not read music. Well, Pavarotti couldn't either, but it was 2008. I was going to be singing with the New York Philharmonic, the Mahler Resurrection Symphony, and I just could not imagine not being able to hear my pitches. So I went back to school. In 2008, I went back to university, took orchestration and arranging, sight singing, and finally the pennies all dropped. And I was able, I did a really, really exciting Resurrection Symphony with them. And it was also proved to me I don't like doing that kind of work. I like the character work.
Mhm.
I love new operas. Also another great reason for having a good ear.
Yes.
So when you talked about Martin Bernheimer, who I loved very much, he had a strong opinion, but he saw everything. I got to do Yuval Sharon, the opera director, who was named one of Time's 100 this year. I'm part of his company. It's called The Company. And I sang in his mobile opera, Hopscotch, 2 inches from Mark Swed, who took over for Martin Bernheimer.
Oh
I
my.
could have reached, if I had stretched my legs a little bit, I could have touched Mark Swed's toes.
Interesting. I want to go back to Daniel Catán because I interviewed, of course, for It's All in the Frijoles, and he died much too soon. It's such a great talent. And he told me that opera was really a process of exercising fortitude, because he said it wasn't something that came to him inherently. He was originally going to be a piano performer, concert pianist. And he said it was almost a daily practice. It was the effort of just trying to be better and better and grow into it. Is it similar for an opera singer?
I would say that opera singing is it's a different branch. It's sort of like comparing a painter, a visual artist with a marathon runner.
Yeah.
It requires a similar discipline. It requires a gigantic dollop of creativity. But singing is all about refining, refining, refining. And as we age, it's exactly the same thing that a marathon runner has to do, for example. You have to stretch every day. You have to train every day, because as you age, your muscles get a little less elastic, and your ability to sing the things that you've always sung becomes more challenging. And also your physicality changes. So you can no longer sing the young prince. You have to sing the king, which means you have to learn new repertoire, which requires a different mindset. You have to be able to use that creative structure that you have made for yourself and discipline to constantly reinvent your persona so that you aren't 60 years old singing Juliet.
Right. Well, so it's a similar process of the daily discipline, the practice, stretching, the stretching, the stretching. It's very demanding, and it's a beautiful art because of that. I think it's
One of the greatest things Daniel also did is his spectrum of music, that the different genres. He could do something in a Puccini-esque style. He could put a South American rhythm into his music. And the last thing that I ever did with him, which I just was shocked and delighted that he thought of me, is he asked me to sing a suite of traditional boleros.
Oh my.
Like Muñequita Linda, Sabor a mí, El Reloj. And he orchestrated them for harp, which Andrea, his wife, played, for flute, and for violin. It was so beautiful. It was so much fun. And the gift that Daniel had is when he finished writing a piece, he released it to the universe and demonstrated abject joy when people would perform his music.
Mm.
He had so much joy. Just before the pandemic, we performed Il Postino in Santa Barbara. And I have never felt him so close to me. I'd never done it while he was alive. I did about 7 productions all over the country of Florencia in El Amazonas, which is a show that he wrote the role of Paula for me. But I'd never done Postino, and I was singing Dona Rosa. And it was just that flavor of his music with Daniel Montenegro in the starring role. And I was so blessed to be able to do a full-fledged opera with a beautiful chorus, beautiful orchestra, days before we were in shutdown, and to have Andrea come up from San Diego to see it. I hadn't seen her since Daniel's funeral celebration, and
That's beautiful. Yes.
it was beautiful to just hold her in my arms and say his music endures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does endure. So what is the difference? You're now in you're in a new musical. You're shifting genre again. You're in a musical in the Heights at the Rubicon in Ventura that's opening the end of this month. How do you prepare differently for a musical than you would for an opera? It's an entirely different genre.
Oh my gosh, it is an entirely different genre. Entirely. And my son lived in Washington Heights for a couple of years, and I lived in a little Santo Domingo, they called it. It was so beautiful when I lived in Manhattan on 107th between Central Park and Manhattan Avenue. But the other thing is I am Latina, but I'm East LA Latina. Yeah. My family is from Mexico, and In the Heights is about Dominican Republic and Puerto Rican, and many people in the cast have done the show many, many times. The thing that is universal is I play Abuela Claudia, who is an immigrant. And I actually have a line in my big aria, which is Paciencia y Fe. And I say, we came to New York. It was so different. I found a job as a maid, and I polished with pride the whole of the Upper East Side. It's so much fun. And the difference is the vocal, it is the technique. In opera, in a nutshell, Yolanda, it is very different. In opera, if you're a soprano, you can be a Verdi soprano, which means you specialize in the Leonoras, the Toscas, is it Tosca? No, the Leonoras, oh gosh, I'm forgetting all the ballos, the
1 minute.
I'm sorry?
Keep
1 minute.
Keep going.
Thank you. All the wonderful divas from the Verdian repertoire. Same thing with Puccini. You could be the Mimis, the Musettas, the Laurettas, all these wonderful people. Singing musical requires bringing chest voice for the excitement. So it's a whole different thing. And I'm very blessed that Luis Salgado, who directed this production, believes in me. And I was able to do it. So we open.
Well, it's going to be a dynamic evening. I'm planning to attend the opening night, and I hope that our viewers will also look for those tickets at the Rubicon and Ventura. It's Suzanna Guzman will be performing in the play by the playwright that wrote the hit Hamilton, In the Heights. So it's going to be a great evening. Suzanna, thank you so much for joining us on Do You See What I See? It's been a delight to have you here and share your world of music with us. Thank you.
Yolanda, thank you for everything that you're doing and all the beautiful writing and joy that you infuse into our world. You give us all such courage and hope. Thank you.
Well, thank you.